what then would be the major insights that you think that Christians can draw from Derrida? What use would he be to a Christian thinker?
It's a really interesting way to pose the question, isn't it? It assumes, and this is not a critique of the question, but it assumes that what we do when we engage with these thinkers as Christians is try to get something out of them, try to, if you like, appropriate the Egyptian gold and then repatriate it, which is fair enough, but I don't think it's the only thing that happens when we read people like this. And what I try to do in the book is paint a broader picture of what is at stake when Reformed readers engage with thinkers like Derrida and Foucault, beyond simply what can we learn from them, what can we take out of their thought in order to enhance or nuance the way that we think. And one way that I try to explore that in the book is by taking an approach that focuses on the problems that they're dealing with. So what does Derrida think it's worth thinking about? What does he think is an issue? And similarly for Foucault. And then allowing a Reformed theological view to engage with those same problems, and then say, okay, what would a biblical, what would a Reformed response to those same issues look like? And I think one thing that does is it helps us both to understand the thinkers better in their own right, I think, because we're comparing them to something that's starting from a very different position, and so we're sharpening our understanding of what exactly they say. But we're also showing how the Bible lends itself, I think, to being a very powerful and very nuanced tool of cultural criticism and cultural theory in a way that's not often, I think, brought out in the way that people use the Bible to engage with these sort of thinkers. So one example might be that in the book, I try and introduce this idea of diagonalization, which is the way in which biblical categories just don't conform to the way that these thinkers are thinking about the world. And one example of that might be the modernism and postmodernism dichotomy. So there's, very broadly speaking, a modernity that thinkers like Foucault and Derrida see as problematic, that they're trying to disrupt in certain ways, and we call that disruption postmodernism. And then the question arises, well, where does the Bible fit within that dichotomy of modernism and postmodernism? And the answer that I try to argue in the book is that it doesn't. It is neither modern nor postmodern, but for a really interesting reason, that it sets up the categories in which both modernism and postmodernism deal very differently, and shows actually that they have a great deal in common, that often is hard for them to acknowledge. So modernism and postmodernism share a fundamental assumption that whatever it is that is most fundamental in the universe, to the extent that we can know it, is impersonal. And that has huge implications for the way that both of those positions articulate themselves and engage with each other. But of course, for a biblical point of view, for a Reformed theological point of view, that couldn't be further from the truth, that the most fundamental thing there is God, and he is tripersonal, and can't be reduced to something that is impersonal, constituent parts of God that are not themselves personal. It's simply not the way the Bible thinks. And so the Bible cuts across this shared assumption that whatever position we take, we must hold the idea that ultimate reality is impersonal, and in a sense changes the game from that point on. A universe in which the most fundamental reality is personal will cash itself out in radically different ways, and really excitingly different ways, than both modernism and postmodernism. And it's by trying to set Derrida and Foucault and the Bible alongside each other and say, well, let's see in their own terms how they both respond to the sort of problems that are raised by Derrida and Foucault, that we get to that sort of way of engaging with them.